Placeholder. Failed to retrieve the chapter from plashdollar.com/novel/from becoming a Superman to becoming invincible, chapters 361. The request to att3yarb.com nab.com/a reader get failed due to a network error. Failed to fetch. This is a placeholder. Attempt to fetch the chapter from hdswimlab.com from becoming a Superman to being invincible, as chapters at 362. Failed with the following error. Failed with the follower of urb.com/ap to reader get. Failed due to a network error. Failed to fetch. This is a placeholder. An attempt to fetch the chapter from wtrbdab.com/n novel/381/from becoming a Superman to becoming invincible, chapter 363. Failed with the following error. Error. Fetch of URL attr.com/ater/get. Failed due to a network error. Failed to fetch. I couldn't fetch the chapter from that URL. Please paste the chapter text here, and I'll edit it into coherent, idiomatic English. Chapter 365. When the dust cleared, the city lay like a sleeping beast, streets torn open, glass glittering like fallen stars, and the skyline jagged where towers had once stood. The air smelled of ozone and burnt metal. Yu Chen stood in the middle of an intersection, his coat shredded, one sleeve hanging in strips. His palms were blistered, his shirt scorched to a pattern of dark scars across his chest. He looked unremarkable, almost fragile, and yet the concrete beneath his feet was as little a match for him as a toy in a child's fist. Around him, the survivors crawled out of rubble, blinking into the harsh daylight. They stared not at the wreckage, but at him. In the silence after the storm, their gazes were full of the same mixture of awe and fear. He had saved them, but at a price they could not name. He remembered the moment the world had tilted, when the Null Emperor's pulse had first washed over the city, an all-consuming hush that smothered sound and meaning. The Emperor's power wasn't just force, it was intent, a swallowing silence that stripped away the rules reality used to obey. Buildings sagged as if tired, machines stuttered and died. People froze mid-step, faces slack and expressionless. Yu Chen had stood against it. That was the simplest truth. He'd felt the null pressure like a weight on his chest, compressing the air, bending his bones, threatening to erase the things he knew. Color, sound, the taste of food, the shape of the person he loved. It would have erased everything. Instead, something inside him answered back. It was not just the invincibility he had cultivated over years of battle, the implacable strength, the immunity to harm. This was deeper, a resonance formed from all the fragments of human will he had ever gathered, the tiny stubborn sparks of defiance he'd collected like tinder. Faces, names, promises, each one a note in a song. The Null Emperor had sought silence. Yu Chen would sing. The first sound he made was not a shout. It was a low, resonant hum that began inside his sternum and traveled out like a tide. The hum gathered, folded, and split into harmonics, memories refracting into light, a child's laugh from a seaside summer, the scrape of an old mentor's cane against cracked pavement, the warmth of shared meals. Each memory pushed back a thread of the Null's reach. The Emperor responded with a pressure wave that shivered the glass towers. It was a voice without words, a thought loop that dredged up doubt. You are nothing, it suggested, a single fallen mote in a furnace. Your resistance is meaningless. Yu Chen answered with a memory so precise he could feel the shape of its edges, the first time he had refused to accept defeat. He was knelt in a pool of his own blood, a younger version of himself, and yet something had kept him upright, an old friend who had dragged him by the collar and said, "Not today." He remembered the fingers, calloused and real, and the crackling certainty that he would not bow. That certainty was infectious. From the ruined apartments, someone began to hum a tune, vaguely recognizable, a lullaby older than the war. Others picked up the rhythm, a worker humming softly as he dug out a trapped neighbor, a child whistling clumsily as he found his lost doll in the rubble. The humors became singers, the singers became a chorus. The sound built like a structure, each voice a beam that refused to buckle. The Null Emperor tried to snuff it with cold, smooth logic, to isolate each voice until it was meaningless. Yu Chen's body took the blows like a shield taking hail. He felt the edges of himself flake away, thoughts he could no longer place slipping into a grayness, but the chorus refused to let him go. Names he could not remember were called out by strangers, and the sound of those names anchored him. Light spilled from him then, not blinding but honest. It climbed the broken facades and stitched together windows and roofs with trembling threads. Where the light touched, the silence dissolved into noise. Radios sputtered back to life. A faucet resumed its thirsty drip. A dog barked as if waking from a dream. The Null Emperor's edges frayed. At the heart of the wreckage, a shape coalesced, dark, massive, a knot of negative space that had been the Emperor's avatar. It pulsed, feeding on the tremors of fear. Yu Chen reached for it with all the force he had, a hand extended not to strike but to hold. The two forces met, a palm of warmth against an absence of sound. For a moment that seemed to stretch forever, they balanced. You can end us, the Emperor's thought breathed, not cruel, simply inevitable. You can break everything you are trying to save. I choose not to, Yu Chen thought back, and his reply was not in words, but in memory. The face of a woman who had once mended his wounds with a trembling hand. A child who had offered him a stick and string fashioned into a sword as if it were Excalibur. The face of a city that had fed him and spat him out and kept asking for another chance. He cupped the null's void like a wounded bird and held it to the chorus of human sound. Something cracked. It was not a victory that came with fireworks, but a splintering like ice giving way underfoot. The Null Emperor recoiled, not destroyed but diminished, forced back into a lattice of lessening dark. The pressure that had stopped time loosened, gears started to turn again. People breathed and moved, color seeped back into the world. When the shock subsided, Yu Chen sank to one knee. The effort had been immense. The chorus around him had become indistinct, a tide of voices receding into the background. He could feel the cost, holes in his memory like lost pages from a book. He could not recall the precise sound of the first bell in his hometown. Names blurred at the edges, but the faces of those who had sung with him today were as clear as sun. "Are you?" someone began. "I'm fine," he lied softly, because he did not want to frighten them with honesty about what being fine had required. Across the street, in the silhouette of a half-collapsed store, Jin and Maya were pulling survivors out. Jin's jaw was set, his hands steady. Maya's laugh bubbled out even in the chaos, small and sharp and fiercely alive. They met Yu Chen's eyes, and Maya mouthed, "We kept the chorus." Jin nodded once, the motion saying more than a speech. They had won this round. The Null Emperor had retreated but not vanished. In the days to come, experts would debate how an entity of silence could be contained. Scholars would argue about resonance and sentience and the metaphysics of memory. Yu Chen would be proclaimed a hero on banners and in hushed conversations, and yet he knew the truth. It had not been him alone. It had been every small voice that refused to be erased. He stood up slowly, joints complaining, and looked toward the horizon where smoke still rose. The city was wounded, but breathing. He had lost pieces of himself, but the fragments he could not remember had been traded for the sound of 1,000 voices choosing to be heard. "Come on," he said to the people nearby. "Let's get the rest of them out." They moved as one, not because of a single hero, but because when counting the cost, people had chosen to be loud. The choice echoed, and for now, echo would hold. This is a placeholder. An attempt to fetch Chapter 366 from HTML/lab.novel, Lightkind, from becoming a Superman to becoming a not chapter to Vincible means failed. The request to http://lab.dom/API/reader get encountered a network error, failed to fetch. Central City Courthouse. We can see that at the time the victim was stabbed, the defendant was still shopping at a supermarket miles away. He has a solid alibi. The defense attorney put a video on the screen. In the footage, a man in a baseball cap bent over a shelf picking items. At one point, he seemed to hear someone call and looked up. The camera caught his face clearly. It was Barry Allen's father. The evidence was irrefutable. When the judge brought the gavel down, the huge stone in Barry's chest finally fell away. He reached across the defense table and gripped his father's hand until his knuckles ached. After so many twists and turns, it was over. Leon had warned him not to move the ketchup on the shelf. Barry had promised he wouldn't, but he had still nudged that one small thing, hid behind the shelf, called his father's name, so his father would look up and reveal his face to the camera. It felt like a tiny, necessary lie, just enough to keep his father out of prison. It wouldn't change anything else. It couldn't lead to a worse future. It wouldn't. Barry returned to his original time with a heart so heavy it hurt and immediately appeared in the courtroom to hear the verdict overturned. Relief washed through him until he could barely breathe. The world wasn't going to be invaded by Darkseid. People were still alive. His mother was gone, but everything else, normalcy, seemed to be slipping back into place. He smiled at the thought. The sunlight felt warmer, softer. As he left the courthouse and faced the sea of reporters, Barry offered a careful smile. "The supermarket surveillance shows everything," he told them. "It clears my father." In the timeline before he'd interfered, Batman had used Wayne Enterprises' influence to secure a retrial. In the original supermarket footage, his father hadn't looked up. There had been no face, no alibi, and no overturned verdict. Now, with his father cleared, much of the world had snapped back to how it had been. Barry let himself feel happy. He let himself hope. A Lamborghini rolled up, reporters abandoning him to swarm toward it. Bruce Wayne stepped out, custom boots gleaming, and threaded his way through the press with a polite smile. "Congratulations, Barry," he said. "I knew your father would be acquitted." Barry didn't hear the rest. He lunged forward and hugged Bruce with everything he had. Of course," he blurted over and over. He hadn't seen this Bruce in years, the man he remembered before the world had rebooted into a different Batman. Feeling a little awkward, Bruce leaned in and murmured, "I can see you're grateful, but our hug is a little long." "Ah, sorry. I'm just excited. Bruce, I can't believe I see you again." Barry stumbled over his words, unable to contain his relief. "We just met downstairs at your apartment the other night," Bruce said, patting Barry's shoulder. "You don't have to thank me. If I hadn't helped, Clark would have been in court with a press pass to speak for you." Barry tried to explain, but the words tumbled out too fast. "Bruce, you were right that night. I shouldn't have messed with the past. The scars of the past make us who we are. I'm sorry I didn't listen and did so many reckless things. But everything's better now." He realized he was babbling and blinked rapidly, forcing himself to breathe. "How about we get some food?" he blurted, changing the subject. "You said next time the other night, so today should be fine, right?" Bruce chuckled and put an arm around Barry's shoulder like an older, protective friend. "Of course. It's early. Maybe we can invite Clark, Diana, Victor. They're all fast, too. Come on, get in the car." Barry brightened. "I know a great Japanese restaurant nearby." Bruce glanced at him and then at the street. "Japanese? That term isn't common. The country you're talking about merged into the Red League decades ago. Their cuisines merged, too." Barry's smile froze. "Red League?" he repeated, staring at Bruce. The name hit him like cold water. The Red League belonged to the rebooted timeline. Shouldn't everything have snapped back? Had his small change undone something else? He felt dizzy, as if the world were tilting beneath his feet. Bruce noticed the look and asked, "Is something wrong?" Barry's mind screamed, "Big problem." He felt a pressure behind his eyes, a frantic jumble of possibilities. The world wasn't exactly as it had been. Maybe the past couldn't be changed after all. Maybe his catch-up trick had twisted things in ways he didn't understand. He hardly registered Bruce saying his name again as the billionaire shook his shoulder. He went limp for a moment. Then a voice cut through, unlike any sound in the plaza. Deep and resonant, it struck Barry in the chest like a bell in a temple. Familiar, impossible. "Barry, come here. Come to the time bowl of the Speed Force." He sat bolt upright. Leon. He had that voice all these years. "Leon, where are you?" Barry scanned the courtyard. Batman looked at him, confused. "Who's Leon? What did you hear?" Bruce asked. Barry's brain tripped and stuttered, but the realization landed. The voice hadn't come from the plaza at all. It had entered his head. Time Bowl, Speed Force. "He's in the Speed Force," Barry finally managed. "Sorry, Bruce," he said, voice tight. "I have to go. I'll explain next time, if you still remember." Barry hugged Bruce hard, then let go, and everything blurred as he dove into the Speed Force and began to run. Chapter 368, Another Restart, The Final Battle. Barry pushed past Lightspeed and slipped into the Speed Force's time bowl. In that state, the Speed Force appeared to him as an inverted bowl, a protective shell where any point in the past could be accessed. He had only just arrived when he began calling out. "Heguang Liang, where are you?" He expected to find Heguang Liang there, but the time bowl held no person, only a black and white Siberian husky. The dog looked up at him with an oddly disdainful gaze. Barry gaped. Why is there a dog? Where's Haiguang Liang? Wait, a dog in the time bowl. He trembled as he pointed at the animal. Do you have the speed force too? The Siberian husky didn't answer in words. It simply nodded, standing perfectly still. Barry felt dizzy, as if the world had turned on its head. Even a dog could access the speed force. What did that make him? Before he could puzzle it out, the husky tossed a data disk at him. Barry snatched it reflexively. Is this for me? He blurted. Watch it. The dog's voice, low and magnetic, sounded eerily like Haiguang Liang's. The disk flashed to life in Barry's hands and projected a hologram. Haiguang Liang's face appeared. Barry almost shouted, Haiguang Liang! Barry, you made things worse. The projection was blunt. Batman told me you altered your father's fate. I'm sending Lil Crypto back to carry a message to you. The hologram continued. Earth has been reoccupied by Darkseid. People have been turned into parademons. Lil Crypto is going to restart the universe. Watch everything on this disc before you leave the Speed Force space. The projection went dark. The name Darkseid hit Barry like a physical blow. He remembered the ruined Earth before the restart, and now the future after the restart sounded even worse. His hands shook. I've screwed up again, he whispered. What's the future like? But the husky didn't wait for answers. It pointed once at the disc, then turned and ran deeper into the future. Hey, wait! Barry shouted, but the animal disappeared. He was alone in the time bowl. Barry forced himself to focus. The disc still hummed in his palm. He opened its interface, folders full of files and videos recorded by the Batman team of the future. He clicked on one. Barry, Batman's recorded voice said calmly, when you see this, the world will have restarted. Remember, the videos rolled on, one after another, each revealing worse scenes. Hordes of humans twisted into parademons, Superman patrolling under someone else's control, vast, terrifying battles on Apocalypse. Darkseid. The word echoed in Barry's head. He watched until his face went pale. Then he opened the document folder. The Batman team had left everything. Lex Luthor's plans, proof of the anti-life equation's existence, the codes and passwords to Apocalypse's armory. Barry read and reread the documents, committing detail after detail to memory. He closed his eyes and forced the information into his mind, sweating as he went. Time in the time bowl was limited by his endurance. Only when his body could no longer manage even a single motion was he pulled back into reality. When he came to, he was collapsing onto the floor, nearly unconscious. Bruce Wayne's voice pierced the fog. Barry! Barry! Alfred, notify Superman and Wonder Woman, now. Barry opened his eyes to the familiar opulence of Wayne Manor. He'd been put to bed somewhere luxuriously soft. He scrambled up, pulling on the pajamas someone had dressed him in, and hurried toward the main hall. Voices drew him there. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and Cyborg, seated around the long conference table beneath the cavernous ceiling. Guys, this is great. You're all here. I have to tell you, Barry began, breathless, then stopped dead. The data disk the husky had given him sat in the table's center, already projecting the future team's plan. The faces around the table were grave. Superman stood with his arms crossed and head bowed, his glasses catching flashes of red on the lenses. Wonder Woman's brow was tightly furrowed. Aquaman looked sullen. Cyborg's arm and eye interfaces were linked into global networks, searching. Barry sank into a chair without saying any more. There was nothing left for him to do but listen. The disc had delivered its message. When the last projection finished, Batman set the disc aside and leaned on the table, expression blank. We have 3 things to do next, he said. First, stop all of Luthor's plans. Second, ensure Louise's safety. He paused, then Barry broke in. And the third is figuring out how to beat Darkseid. No, Batman's voice was low and cold. That's the fourth. The third is to build a Hellbat armor. Barry stared. Haiguang Liang's own return through the Speed Force had been strange and exhilarating in a way he hadn't expected. Outside of it, to fly past light speed on his own required laws or biofield tricks. Inside the Speed Force, a few skating-like steps were enough, as if the whole world was pushing him forward. When he arrived back at the moment he had left the future Batman team, the scorched globe that had been burned for thousands of miles by the Mother Box was whole again. Life had returned. Haiguang Liang let out a small laugh of relief. It's done. He clapped once and dove into his inner world. In the next heartbeat, his main body reappeared outside, joined by Diana and the others. Tony, in the middle of patching his anti-Superman armor, took a breath to steady himself. "The restart's finished," he said, "but the war isn't over. Our timing to return was perfect." Haeguang Liang looked out toward the Pacific. On the islands in East Asia, the Red League's iron armor troops had assembled alongside Atlantis' underwater forces and the Amazon warriors of Paradise Island. The leaders of the three factions and the Justice League had gathered. Superman wore a jet black suit. Batman had on brutal, battle-ready armor. Every sign showed they were preparing for the great final battle. Chapter 369, Justice League Apocalypse War. Lion led Tony and the two others into the sky above the first island chain in East Asia. Hidden beneath the biofield, no one on the ground noticed the four extra figures hovering above. "Is that Batman? Don't his suits usually show his chin? Why is this one completely covered? It looks familiar," Tony muttered as he studied Batman, who was already coordinating deployments along the coastline. It was obvious Batman was the principal commander for this war. Jarvis spoke up. "Sir, I found it in the Justice League database. That's their Hellbat armor. They forged it not long ago." Jarvis, having reconnected to the network as soon as he came back to Earth after its restart, had already hacked into the Justice League's archives. In terms of networking, even Cyborg and Batman together were no match for Jarvis. "Hellbat armor? Sounds familiar," Tony mused. Jarvis answered quickly. "This armor is very famous in the comics, sir. In the stories, Superman tempered it in the sun, Cyborg wove the internal energy pathways, Aquaman forged parts under extreme conditions, Flash contributed his speed and Wonder Woman enchanted it. Batman wore the suit to break into Apocalypse alone to rescue his son Damian." Tony blinked. "So in that world, the other heroes all helped him build it?" "That's what the Justice League database records," Jarvis said. "They made preparations specifically to face Darkseid. Superman deliberately entered the sun's interior, both to increase his own strength and to temper materials for Batman. The others prepared in their own ways. Cyborg upgraded his systems, Aquaman trained under extreme conditions, Wonder Woman returned to Paradise Island to rally the Amazons. While preparing for their own fights, they also contributed to the Hellbat armor." Tony scoffed. "Ridiculous. If they all helped, the armor can't be that good. It can't hold a candle to my anti-Superman armor. I built that myself." "I'm sorry, sir," Jarvis replied. "From the test data, the Hellbat's overall performance is actually slightly superior to your anti-Superman armor." "What?" Tony's voice rose with disbelief and a stubborn, wounded pride. "Just a few minutes and Batman's already stronger than me?" He jabbed a finger toward Lion. "Lion, look at Kal-El. He even helped temper materials in the sun." Lion's mouth twitched. "What does that have to do with me? Am I your universal utility belt?" "Look at Kal-El. Look at Wonder Woman," Tony kept repeating. Jarvis chimed in, provocation in its tone. "Sir, I should remind you that the anti-Superman armor was something young Master Lion brought you from another world." Lion gave a thumbs up. "Jarvis, nicely put." Tony was momentarily speechless, and Jarvis kept poking. "I want to see how the Hellbat is better than my armor. Test data can be wrong," Tony insisted stubbornly. "Are we going down there or not?" Lion shook his head. "I don't plan to intervene in their decisive battle this time." "Why? We could reduce a lot of casualties if we joined in." Tony was confused. Lion looked down at the massive troops arrayed along the coast, their formations reflected in his eyes. "Because, Tony, this isn't our war. We don't have to step in." And Batman wouldn't want us to intervene either," Lion continued. "This is their hatred, their war. Earth will be reborn through the fight with Apocalypse. More than that, this is Batman's challenge to Darkseid." A small smile crossed Lion's face. "Have you ever seen Batman lose a challenge in the comics?" Tony shook his head. "He's never lost a duel, but this is a war between planets, not a duel. It's different. You can choose the right moment to help if you want. I'm not stopping you." Lion tapped Tony's chest plate. Then he looked at the others. "Diana, Kara, you're free to go down. Kal-El and the Amazon army are already there. Go if you want to help." Kara looked down at Superman and shook her head as if unconcerned. "Kal doesn't need me to protect him. He's strong now. He's not the baby who was sent here in a rocket." Though she said it lightly, Kara was anxious about her cousin. Using her supervision and hearing, she watched Superman and Louise kiss before the battle, heard their sappy sweet nothings, and a faint smile slipped across her face. Superman was, after all, her last relative in this universe. Seeing him grow up healthy on Earth, become a hero, and find someone he loved made her heart settle. Diana nodded. If they're at a disadvantage, I will step in. She sighed softly. I didn't expect Paradise Island to truly exist in the restarted world. It's a strange, wonderful feeling. The Wonder Woman down there is me after the restart, but we don't look the same. It's a good thing everyone followed you and left back then, Lion, she added. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to face people who've changed. Lion teased. So now you all have to follow me back to my universe. There's nothing wrong with that, Diana said with a smile. I've already learned a lot about human society here. Visiting another world would only let me learn more. While they spoke, the forces below completed their preparations. Cyborg used a mother box to open a boom tube, this time a one-way channel, only allowing travel from Earth to Apocalypse. Clearly, he had modified the mother box's programming. Troop after troop passed through the boom tube in sequence, silently gripping weapons. Even the Justice League members exchanged only a few looks before stepping into the portal. This was a planetary war, an invaded world's last stand against an aggressor. Each of them carried a quiet resolve to die if necessary. Lion and the three others blended into the ranks and went through the boom tube with the rest. On Apocalypse, where the sky was always blood red, a brutal conflict had already begun. The moment the Earth forces landed, the boom tube's eruption drew swarms of parademons. The ground became a maelstrom, towering suits of armor clashing against endless waves of parademons. Tony couldn't help grinning. This grand cinematic battlefield felt like it should have been his. High in the Apocalyptian temple, Darkseid sat on his throne waiting for the challengers. Batman's team split in two. Batman and Cyborg pushed toward the Apocalypse armory, while the rest advanced straight for Darkseid. Alongside the veteran Justice League members were other heavy hitters Batman had recruited with the benefit of future intelligence: Black Adam, Shazam, Dr. Fate, Green Lantern. In this war, information about the enemy was nearly complete. From the outset, Batman controlled the tempo. Wow, Tony grumbled over the battlefield comm channel. These Justice League guys don't even shout slogans when they go to war. Do you want Batman to shout, Justice League, assemble? Lion replied dryly. That's Captain's move, not Batman's. The rest of it was simple chaos. Superman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and a host of other heroes swarmed Darkseid. He opened with Omega beams. The relentless beams chased the fastest, Superman and Flash, but both were ready. They led the beams, one after the other, toward Granny Goodness and Desaad. Darkseid ended up eradicating his two trusted lieutenants himself. Furious, he bellowed. Fresh from the sun, his strength barely exceeded Superman's. Without the anti-life equation, only the Omega beams were a real threat, so Darkseid spammed them. You run fast? Omega beams. You wield Green Lantern's ring? Omega beams. Magic, summon demons, Shazam's 6 powers, all met the same fate: Omega beams. He fought against dozens at once, scarcely moving from his throne, while his beams lashed out like a hurricane. But every time, either Wonder Woman or Superman intercepted them. Diana's indestructible bracelets of submission deflected strikes that would have turned anyone to ash. Superman took hits with his body and his heat vision. They were the only two who could effectively stand in the way, and even they were gaunt and bloodied after repeated blocks. Batman, you ready yet? Barry pressed a hand to the communicator at his ear. It's ready. Hell's Spores all-out launch in 60 seconds. Everyone evacuate. Batman's order flashed through everyone's earpieces. No, Superman and the others are pinned by Darkseid, Barry snapped. I'll stop him. In the lull between beams, Batman descended wearing the Hellbat armor. Using its mobility, he closed on Darkseid and struck. Amplified by the nearly flawless suit, he became a super-powered bat, darting and striking at vital points, narrowly avoiding blows that would have crushed any ordinary man. While Batman kept Darkseid occupied, the others began to fall back. Shazam carried the injured Superman. Cyborg supported Wonder Woman. Batman, hurry. Retreat, Barry shouted. Apocalypse's armory had been opened. Thousands of Hellspores were already on their way, each one a living bomb at Darkseid. But Batman was still entangled in combat. If he eased up, Darkseid would unleash the Omega Beams again and wipe out everyone. He had to buy time. "I've got another way out. Get out of here, Barry," Batman said through the comm channel, his voice strained from the Hellbat's limited spare power. "But go." Barry gritted his teeth, glancing back every few steps before finally sprinting away from Darkseid's palace. With the others gone, Batman allowed a brief private smile. The data disk his future self had left him had contained something only he could find, a quote from the Joker. Joker had been right. Batman always sacrificed others. If he had sacrificed himself to save Louise before the world had to be reset, maybe things would never have come to this. He would not make that mistake again. This time, he would not hesitate. This time, he would be the one to pay the price. The sky above Apocalypse filled with descending hell spores. Barry, sensing something, spun and activated the Speed Force to run back. Darkseid, having realized the threat and allowed Batman to close, turned his beams on the fleeing crowd. Batman roared into the comms, voice thin with effort. "Cyborg, open a boom tube." He lunged toward the Omega Beams, intending to take them with his body. A boom tube ripped open in front of Darkseid's throne. The Hellspore's impact, powerful enough to strip a planet bare, would strike here and fling Darkseid into the boom tube. On the other end was the precise trap Batman and Cyborg had calculated, a tunnel leading directly to a black hole. In the plan, he would be the only hero to sacrifice himself. Just before the beams struck, Batman remembered his last conversation with Alfred. "Are you sure you have to do this, Master Wayne?" "I'm sure. This might be the most meaningful thing I ever do." "But you said that last time you went to duel Master Kent." "I was wrong then. I'll make up for it now." Batman looked at the converging Omega Beams, gave a cool smile, and closed his eyes. He knew the light would vaporize him in an instant. He wouldn't feel pain. It was a neat kind of death, tidy and final. He embraced it. Then the light in front of him dimmed. "Every time we meet, saving you gives me a headache, Batman." Batman opened his eyes. Another Wonder Woman, clad in golden armor, stood between him and the beams, intercepting them. A man in a pitch-black suit held Batman in his hand. "Leon?" Batman managed. "Yes," the man said. Before Batman could say more, Leon swept him away from the palace while the golden Wonder Woman covered their retreat. Darkseid's roar faded into the hall. "Time to go," Leon said. Cyborg had already used a mother box to send most of Earth's forces back to Earth. Tony and Kara had helped in the fighting. Thanks to their intervention, Earth's casualties were under 100. Only Batman and Barry had been left behind on Apocalypse. Leon casually scooped up the exhausted Barry as he sprinted toward the throne, and with Diana at their heels, they dove into the boom tube, returning to Earth. The Hellspores detonated in the tunnel before Darkseid, a wave of annihilation. The impact hurled Darkseid into the link to the black hole and reduced the Parademon hordes to ash. Batman's plan, to hold Darkseid until the Hellspores could send him away, had worked, even if his intended sacrifice did not come to fruition the way he'd expected. Back on Earth, the first island chain coast thrummed with tension. Tens of thousands watched the horizon. When Batman reappeared, he stood for a long moment, then nodded to the expectant crowd. "We won. Earth, we won," he said. Silence broke into a roar. People hurled hats and shoes into the air. Cheers rolled across the waves like thunder. "We did it," someone cried. "We beat Darkseid. Clark, over here." Soldiers and civilians celebrated alike. This battle had decided the world's fate. They had returned alive when so many had expected to die. Warriors who had gone to Apocalypse prepared to meet death were now laughing and crying on the shore. Amid the jubilation, Diana found the golden-armored Wonder Woman to ask about Paradise Island and what she had seen. Tony, arms crossed, waited for Batman. He wanted to talk armor, while Kara trailed after Leon. "Aren't you going to find your cousin?" Leon teased Kara with a wink. "He's got his Louise Lane," Kara said, eyelashes glinting in the sun. "Then you'll probably have to wait until tomorrow," Leon said, stepping on a crab and burying it in the mud with a casual flick. Kara's golden hair shimmered in sunlight. Normally cool features bloomed with a shy color. "I know what they're doing," she said. "They're going to perform the Earth's renewal ritual, just like Carl's parents did." "You even know that?" Leon sounded slightly surprised. Kara tilted her head and watched him. I saw you and Diana doing that ritual, so I want to try it too. Leon looked at the flush on her cheeks, then lowered his head. I'll take you to my world. Chapter 371, Giancarlo's Relief. The next morning, Leon led Kara out of his inner world. Kara was low-spirited. Yesterday's final battle had pushed her steel body and Shazam-level durability to their limits. It had been a continuous, high-intensity fight, exhilarating, sharpening her skills from novice to master, but the cost had been enormous. Even bathed in sunlight, she looked languid, like a kitten curled up on a sofa. The coastline was littered with burnt-out bonfires. A few still sputtered weakly, ringed by bleary-eyed soldiers. Most of them were Atlanteans, only they would drink themselves stupid and forget decorum at a victory celebration. After all, their king, Arthur Curry, had led the charge in drinking himself into unconsciousness. The Red Alliance had already departed, pilots in steel armor, five-pointed stars sprayed on their chests, who had agreed with the Justice League to announce the victory later and hurried back to their garrisons. The Amazons from Paradise Island, however, had not left. They had set up a camp at some distance and cordoned it off. The two Dianas had stayed up all night exchanging stories. Nearby were the Justice League tents. The whole league had celebrated there until late. Leon and Kara spotted Tony in one of the larger, open tents. He was asleep beside an extinguished bonfire, the anti-Superman armor cradled in his arms. On the other side of the fire, Bruce Wayne slept soundly, using the Hellbat armor as a pillow. The two playboys had apparently skipped their usual contests and flirtations. Instead, they had chatted by the fire until the small hours. What they'd talked about remained a mystery. Leon and Kara walked along the beach, watching the rising sun ripple on the wet sand. Slowly, people began to emerge from the tents, blinking at the light. When Clark and Louise stepped out together, Kara, linking her arm in Leon's, kicked a crab that had burrowed in the sand back into the sea. "Clark," Leon called. The previous night, Clark and Louise had spent some time flying before returning to the beach. Don't let them sharing a tent fool you. Louise had been pregnant for some time, and Clark had to be gentle. It was likely most of the night he had been whispering nothing but soft words. Leon led Kara toward them. Superman had one hand in his pocket and the other hooked around Louise's arm. As Leon approached, a flash of memory hit him. He remembered a future video from a data disk in which he'd been held down by this Kryptonian. The recollection of how badly he'd been beaten made an involuntary hand go to his face. "First time meeting, Clark, though I've seen you many times already," Leon said, offering his hand. He teased lightly. "Why touch your face like that as soon as you see me? Worried I'll take your title as the strongest man on Earth?" Superman smiled. "That's not entirely untrue. Thank you for saving our world, and for saving Batman twice." Batman had explained the plan to the League the night before, and Superman added, "When we were planning, we studied your fight with Darkseid. At the time, everyone compared me to you. Honestly, you were just too strong. Diana and Arthur kept looking at me like, we're Kryptonians too. Why is there such a difference? For a while, I felt like I was living in your shadow, Leon." Leon released his handshake. "That's on me. If there's a next time, I'll try to hold back a bit." "Maybe I should be the one to thank you," Superman offered. "No need," Leon answered. "If you want to do me a favor, help me publish an article in the Daily Planet. Make it dramatic, full of exaggerated clauses." "Wrong person to ask," Superman said with a grin, pointing at Louise. "Talk to the great reporter beside me." Leon chatted with Louise for a few moments, then looked back at Superman. There was a marked difference between Superman now and the controlled, violent figure he had been. The morning light split him in two, half bathed by sun, half hidden in shadow, giving him the air of a compassionate savior. He rarely smiled and always wore a slight frown, but when you looked into his eyes, there was an unmistakable tenderness. "We actually came to talk to you about something," Leon said, nodding toward Kara. "This is Kara." Superman looked up. He'd seen a woman in a Shazam suit fighting parademons during the retreat and wondered if this was that hero. Leon quickly clarified, "She isn't the Shazam you know. She's Kara Zor-El, your cousin." "My cousin." Superman's surprise was plain. He'd believed he had no other living Kryptonian relatives. The possibility that Leon had brought a cousin left him stunned and for a moment excited. Kara nodded calmly. Their reunion wasn't dramatic or tearful, it was quiet and steady. Superman was quietly glad to have another family member. Kara, in turn, was happy to see her cousin living a settled life on Earth. Kara had carried an obsession for a long time, Kal-El. Her parents had sent her to Earth with the task of protecting her younger cousin. During the years she spent imprisoned by Lex Luthor, she clung to that purpose, telling herself she had to survive because Kal-El needed her protection. When Leon rescued her from the lead room and she learned Kal-El was dead, she'd felt her reason for living evaporate. If Leon hadn't pulled her out of the darkness, given her a chance for vengeance, and become another pillar in her life, she might have self-destructed in rage and perished alongside Zod. Still, the shadow of Kal-El never quite left her, until yesterday, when she saw Superman alive and well on Earth. That sight finally erased the last of her obsession. She didn't care about the fate of the universe. Her world had always been small, just the ruined Krypton and a lost younger brother. From her perspective, Leon had first saved her and then, in restarting the world, had saved her cousin as well. To her, Leon had saved everything that mattered. He was the best person in her life, the precious one she couldn't let go of. After the calm, practical recognition, Kara didn't reminisce with Superman. The Kal-El she remembered had been a baby, and Superman had no real memories of Krypton either. There were simply no old shared stories to tell. They traded a few minutes of Kryptonian recollections. Kara offered Clark a few earnest words about being a good father, and then she left with Leon. Chapter 11. The Last Two Things. Returned to Marvel, Leon was getting ready to leave. He'd finished everything he truly needed to accomplish in the DCEU. The Life Codex and various fragments of Kryptonite were already in his possession. He'd collected the blood of powerhouses, Wolf Superman, Superman, Darkseid, and as an unexpected bonus, a relatively complete anti-life equation. The anti-life equation is one of the supreme powers in the DC universe, probing the mysteries of spirit and soul. Those mysteries belong to DC, but bringing the equation into the Marvel universe didn't mean it couldn't be useful. Leon didn't intend to use it to control people. To him, it was knowledge, a treasure that would be invaluable in helping him understand the Infinity Stones. After I get back, I need to chase down those Super Skrulls, he muttered. It's been months and they still haven't nabbed the Mind Stone from Thanos. At that moment, he and Kara were walking toward Barry Allen's tent. Even though all their objectives in the DCEU had been met, Leon still had two things to do: return Barry's mother and check on the old wizard's successor. Barry had been sleeping in Leon's inner world for a day and was about to wake up. Leon wondered how shocked he'd be to find his son and husband apparently aged several years. "Barry, Barry," Leon called from outside the tent. Barry inside only groaned, turned over, mumbled, and kept sleeping. So Leon kept calling, louder now, "Come out and take your mother back, Barry." The word mother was a surefire trigger for Barry. Before Leon even finished, Barry appeared in front of him, crackling with the static of the Speed Force. Leon tore a strip of tent fabric and wrapped it around Barry's bare shoulders, then reached into his inner world, took Barry's mother in both hands and handed her over. This! Barry's eyes nearly popped out. The grogginess of waking vanished. His mind snapped clear. He looked back and forth between Leon and his mother. You, my mother," he stammered incoherently. Leon waved a hand. "You don't remember? Right. When you kept restarting the world, I hadn't made this change yet. Your mother was brought over by another version of you when the world was restarted, and that you asked me for help." Barry stood frozen, tears welling in his eyes. "There's actually a way to do that. Leon, thank you, because of you, my mother. No need to thank me, just don't keep restarting the world." Leon pushed Barry back into the tent. "Figure out how to explain things to your mother first." "How am I supposed to explain this?" Barry panicked again. Leon suggested, "Bring your father over first. He must miss her terribly." "Right, I'll go now." Barry shot out of the camp like lightning and returned seconds later with his father, placed his mother in the tent, and then rushed off again. Leon could only shake his head at Barry's flustered energy. "Kara, let's go find the old wizard's successor next." They wandered through the camp until they found a small boy splashing water on his face. "Billy," Leon called. The boy looked up, about 10 years old, wearing a felt cap, small-faced. "Are you talking to me, sir? Wait, you're Leon, the one who beat Darkseid in that future video." Billy got excited. "It should be me if nothing unexpected happened," Leon replied. Leon nodded. "I left a message that made Batman send you to Philadelphia to find the old wizard and receive the inheritance." Billy was the kid who would become Shazam. Pure-hearted and kind, the old wizard had chosen him. "Yeah, Batman said so," Billy said, nodding. "So the old wizard must be really pleased with you, right?" "He should be," Billy thought, then slowly nodded. "The old wizard passed the divine power to me directly after he met me." Leon almost choked back a laugh. Back when Leon had arranged the succession, he'd had to explain pros and cons carefully and guide the old wizard step by step. Now the old man had simply bestowed the power without any of Leon's meddling. Was he being judged because his thoughts were a little less pure? Leon mused that even the purest child becomes complicated with age. Still, since the wizard had found a fitting successor, Leon's job was done. "I'm leaving, Billy. You can finish washing up." Leon tousled the boy's hair and turned to go. "Wait, Leon, can we take a picture together?" Billy grabbed him. "Of course. Kara, help us take a picture." After the photo, Billy studied the image on his phone and beamed. "Leon, the way you punched Darkseid in the video was so cool," he said, clenching his little fist. "That's nothing. If you learn to control divine power, you'll be awesome too. Just don't turn into too much of a loudmouth, okay? Goodbye." Leon waved. Billy chuckled. It was hard to picture such a child becoming a blustering, talkative hero, but Solomon's wisdom has its draw, he thought. That afternoon, everyone from the Justice League saw Leon and company off by the sea. "Goodbye, everyone. I hope when I return Earth is still as peaceful as it is now," Leon called, waving. Tony clapped a hand on Batman's shoulder. "Your anti-Superman and anti-Wonder Woman plans aren't reliable. Listen to me. Build targeted battlesuits. That's the only way to guarantee strength." Batman smiled. "Perhaps next time you visit, I'll show you an anti-Iron Man suit." "Anti-me?" Tony blinked. "What are you doing? You should be watching your red-haired boy." "Barry or Billy?" "Both. Barry has already caused a huge disaster, and I don't think Billy isn't far behind. You'd better listen to me and make some suits." Tony kept pushing the idea that anti-suits beat anti-plans until Batman nudged him over next to Leon. On the other side, Diana and Kara finished their goodbyes and joined Leon. "Get ready. We're leaving." Leon activated his travel ability, locked onto the Marvel Universe, and, after draining a large amount of energy, took everyone back to the moment he and Tony had left. West Coast, Los Angeles, the underground garage of Stark Mansion. Their four figures rippled into existence. Tony, as usual, dropped into a coma. Kara and Diana blinked, then began to look around. Just as Leon was about to speak, a frown crossed his face. In that instant, several gazes had fixed on him, and then slid away. He suspected it was beings like eternity and death observing what he'd brought back from another universe. Unfortunately, this trip had been to DC, and the DC and Marvel universes have a history of crossover. Those multiversal entities would already know DC's truths. They wouldn't find anything especially new this time. Leon pushed the notion of being watched to the back of his mind. He wasn't strong enough to confront cosmic onlookers yet. There would be a time for that when he was more powerful. Even watched, it's still good to be back in Marvel, he sighed. In the DC universe, he'd been weakened. His Kryptonian blood wasn't diminished, but his starry sky system was. The system's true power lay in comprehending and applying laws. Leon had mastered the laws of Marvel. In DC, everything required relearning. Perhaps one day he would reach the power to create a universe with a single thought and force his own laws into other worlds. Only then would he be able to unleash his true, full strength everywhere. Legia Duo returned to the villa's long-neglected garage. The first thing on his mind wasn't to introduce Diana and Kara to the Marvel Universe. He was itching to get back into his inner world and use the Time Stone to accelerate time. The Reg Duo clone's gestation period was 100 years. In the DC Universe, he could only watch helplessly. Back in Marvel, though, 100 years, or even 1,000, wasn't a problem. But before he could start speeding up time, he had to take care of Paradise Island, which hovered above a sea of blood. Is this the Marvel Earth? Diana stepped out of the garage. The February breeze off the sea was sharp. She stood by the railing, watching the sunlight glitter across the waves. It looks the same as our world. Legiduo and Kara came up behind her. Of course, Legiduo said. Earths look pretty similar, no matter the universe. Not much difference at a glance. Diana looked up at the cliffside villa. Is this your home, Legiduo? Will we live here now? The two women looked as if they'd been plucked from another life and brought to a foreign shore. They hadn't planned this, hadn't picked a place to stay, or known what awaited them. If this were a fairy tale, they'd be the mermaids who trade everything for legs and a chance at love. Unlike that story, Legiduo had been led astray by Tony once, but his intentions were to protect people, not to let anyone vanish like foam beneath the waves. We probably won't live here, Legiduo said after a pause. He'd been thinking of taking them to New York, but the girls might not like the steel and concrete of the city. Compared with decadent New York, the Los Angeles coast was more comfortable. His hesitation, however, caused Diana to jump to conclusions. So this isn't your residence? Oh, Legiduo, you're so young. Haven't you graduated and found a job yet? Diana asked bluntly. Another Wonder Woman told me it's hard for young people to own a home in the modern world. Even Superman still pays a mortgage. You're your world's Superman, Diana said to him. You saved the Red Room, destroyed Hydra, even saved other worlds. It's no surprise you haven't had time to work. If you're short on money, she went on cheerfully, we can take some jewels from Paradise Island and sell them. If Mother objects, we'll just sneak them out. Legiduo blinked. Had she really just suggested stealing from her own island? He felt an overwhelming whiff of money in the air. Before he could reply, Kara, who'd been listening, spoke up too. I can help earn money, Kara said. She was stubborn. She wouldn't be outdone. Carl said Kryptonians can make good money as porters. Kara's face was gentle and earnest, but the idea of her hauling luggage for cash made Legiduo want to laugh and cringe at once. You've got the wrong idea, he said, patting his forehead. This is actually the Stark family residence. You don't have to pretend, Legiduo, Diana said, blinking. What are you talking about? With my strength, how could I be short on money? He answered, ruffling Diana's hair. He'd told them stories of his exploits, but hadn't gone into his family background. Apparently, that left room for wild guesses. Strength doesn't equal wealth, Diana replied, quick as ever. Superman still worries about money, Batman's rich. It doesn't work the way you think. That's because Superman's kind, Legiduo said with a shrug. Before Diana could pick apart that logic, the armor, controlled by Jarvis, approached. Tony himself was inert inside, but Jarvis came forward, bowing courteously. Miss Prince, Miss L, forgive the misunderstanding, the butler said. The Starks are a family similar to the Waynes. Jarvis proceeded to give them a careful introduction to the world and to Stark Industries. He praised Legiduo's deeds with steady, formal enthusiasm, laying out the facts. Under Legiduo, the world was in a rare peace. He controlled several corporations and substantial assets, and two organizations, Men in Black and Camartage, operated under his direction. The Men in Black handled, and Camartage handled. Jarvis's words occasionally trailed as he organized the explanation, then resumed smoothly. He emphasized that Legiduo led those organizations, maintaining the peace of Earth and its dimensions. As he spoke, Jarvis used the armor's projectors to display footage. Legiduo dismantling Hydra cells, standing firm against nuclear blasts, expelling scrolls, and profiles of notable figures and groups on Marvel Earth. Diana and Kara watched, nodded, and asked questions, putting the scattered pieces together. Their earlier assumptions dissolved into recognition. So I was wrong, Diana said, a new smile for Legiduo. She took his hand. But if your superhero companies ever run short, we can still... No, really, that won't be necessary, Legiduo cut in, smiling. You'd better not try to pry jewels from Her Majesty. Would she be angry? Diana teased. She might be, Legiduo warned. By the way, your mother and the others? They're still in your world, right? Are they okay? Diana had been so wrapped up in meeting other Amazons the night before that she'd nearly forgotten Paradise Island. Oh, yes, I was chatting and got distracted. Are they really safe? Of course, Legiduo said. He pointed out to sea. There's a problem, though. In this world, the Black Sea has no divine power from Zeus, so I don't recommend putting Paradise Island back there. He outlined the options. One is to buy an island far out in the Pacific and have Paradise Island replace it. The other is to place Paradise Island inside Kamartaj's small world. Only Kamartaj mages can go in and out, and they plan to build a mage academy there. That way, the island won't be disturbed, and communication with the outside world will be manageable. He added, I also have some spare world rings. You could store Paradise Island in one, but then the world would need to be managed. Diana and Kara listened intently, relief and curiosity in their faces. Plans were being made. The island would be safe. Only then could Duo return to his private work, the Time Stone, waiting to shorten a long, long century. Chapter 374, World Ring and 10,000 times acceleration. After he had reached the peak of the World Lord realm, Duo would occasionally take time to create one or two world rings. Over time, he had accumulated dozens. The smallest had a diameter of several hundred kilometers. The largest stretched to over 10 million kilometers. A few of those rings were promised as prizes for sparring matches, meant for Banner and Wanda, among others. The rest were put away for future contingencies. Duo casually produced 2 world rings, each about 100 kilometers across, and handed them to the 2 people before him. If anyone on Earth could be called wealthier than Duo, no one had shown it. He could casually pull a world out of his pocket, rich with ores hidden deep beneath the surface. Possessing a ring like that was like owning a small planet. Of course, these worlds had no light or inhabitants. If someone wanted to live there, they would have to modify them. Diana and Kara accepted the rings and, following Duo's instruction, extended their thoughts into them. What huge spaces! Duo, you can actually make treasures like this, Diana cried. Kara was stunned as well. It's like carrying a whole world. Can Kryptonians do this? This isn't a Kryptonian ability, Duo said, shaking his head. It's more like a talent I have at this stage. How about it, Diana? Want to put Paradise Island into one of these rings? Diana frowned, thought for a few seconds, then shook her head. I don't want my mother and the others to be isolated from the world any longer. Another Wonder Woman told me Paradise Island has been cut off from the outside world for too long. When Steppenwolf invaded, my mother and the others couldn't call for help in time. I won't let Paradise Island stay like that. If possible, can you take me to see Kamartaj's small world? She returned the ring in her hand to Duo. Kara handed hers back at the same time. Going to Kamartaj is certainly possible, Duo said, frowning. But what are you two doing? You're giving up these rings. Diana shook her head. These rings are too valuable. I don't need one. Kara stayed silent, only looking at Duo, signaling him to take it back. So one of you originally planned to steal treasures from your mother for me, and the other wanted to move bricks to raise money to support me, and now you don't even want me to take care of you in return? Duo pinched both their cheeks with a firm hand. This is the first time I've given you gifts. Think carefully if you want to refuse. Diana and Kara's spines stiffened reflexively. When they had pleaded for mercy before, Duo had smiled the same way. They didn't dare refuse. Diana glanced at the ring, then at Duo. After a moment, she smiled. If I'm not even allowed to refuse, then shouldn't you put it on me yourself, Duo? She held out her arm. One hand rested on Duo's chest, the other presented her middle finger. There was a sudden, compelling charm in her expression, an unmistakable ambiguity in her gaze. Kara frowned and, without speaking, quietly switched her superbrain into learning mode. Duo blinked, then smiled. All right. He took Diana's delicate hand and slid the world ring onto her middle finger. Is that good enough? The moment Duo released her hand, Kara's own reached out from the other side. She didn't speak. Her face simply said, I want one too. All right. Duo placed the second ring on Kara's middle finger. Kara nodded contentedly and pulled her hand back to study the ring. Not there, Duo. Diana leaned in and spoke softly. She held up her left hand with the back to Duo and slowly pushed the ring off her middle finger. Not that position. She rotated the ring and slid it onto her ring finger, pushing it all the way in. It's better here. She winked. Another Wonder Woman told me that. Duo's lips moved, as if to ask whether she knew the meaning of wearing a ring on the ring finger, but he didn't speak. Suddenly, he felt a strong tug at his neck. an almost physical pressure. If that force had been applied to an ordinary person, it would have torn them apart. He looked toward the source of the pull. Kara pursed her lips. She too removed her ring and put it on her ring finger. "Why are you doing that too?" Lejeduo asked. "Louise wears her ring there," Kara said, unwilling to admit she was copying Diana. In truth, Louise had not told her. Superbrain had deduced the custom. All right. Lejeduo raised his hands in mock surrender. "Just keep the world rings. Now let's go to Kamartaj and release Paradise Island." How the ring was worn was, in the end, just a formality. Some of the most romantic, craziest elopements in history only involved moving to another city or disappearing into the mountains. Diana and Kara had followed him into another universe without asking for plans or packing anything. They simply came. That kind of determination and trust meant more than which finger the ring sat on. Lejeduo opened a portal and pierced the dimensional barrier, linking directly into Kamartaj's small world. It was night there. Moonlight filtered into the pocket dimension and made the landscape glow. He instructed Jarvis to look after Tony, then led the two women down onto the small world's grass. The moon was rising. This was the most beautiful hour in the small world. Cool moonlight spread over forests, plains, and lakes. Moon-crazed beasts lined the hills, heads tilted up to drink the lunar essence. Unicorns bent to sip from streams, their silver forms complementing the moonlight. The small world at night felt like a living painting. Diana and Kara stared, stunned. It was too beautiful, too enchanted. The small animals, the swaying trees, they both felt a sudden urge to settle down there. Lejeduo guided them over forests and hills, and they skimmed past a flock of fire dragons. He wondered how Banner had been training these magical beasts for the past 2 months. The fire dragons flew in neat circles now, like trained pigeons. Perhaps the Hulk had beaten them into shape whenever they strayed. Soon they reached the huge lake at the center of the world. "How do you like it?" Lejeduo asked, gesturing to the vast basin, 200 kilometers across, before them. Diana looked around and felt there was probably no place on Earth with a stronger sense of nature than this. She nodded repeatedly. "This is it. If Mother doesn't agree, I'll persuade them." Since Diana approved, Lejeduo didn't hesitate. He took Paradise Island and placed it on the lake. In such a vast sheet of water, the island didn't stand out. Using the world's power, he anchored the island's base to the continent's crust and then descended onto the island with Diana and Kara. At the same time, within his inner world, Lejeduo's consciousness split into 3 and turned eagerly to the sky. The 3 stones, space, time, and reality, that had lain dormant in the DC universe for a long time rose above the inner world and began to glow brilliantly once more. Lejeduo formed a hand seal from the Book of Cagliostro. The time stone erupted with dazzling green light. Time within the entire inner world began to accelerate, 10 times, 100 times. The rate kept climbing, and the energy costs surged exponentially. He then activated the space stone. Among the 6 stones, the space stone was a core source of energy, capable of supplying what the others needed. With its endless azure energy, the time acceleration multiplier within the inner world shot upward. Finally, it reached 10,000 times normal speed. Under 10,000 times acceleration, the elements of the entire world became turbulent. Everything moved at extreme speed. Even the dozens of stars hanging in the sky blurred into bands of light. In this state, elemental interactions were wildly chaotic, making it far harder for Lejeduo to discern any laws, so he usually capped his experiments at 1,000 times. Now, however, he used the time stone to speed things up 10,000-fold for a particular purpose, to hasten the gestation of his Regeduo clone. System readout: Regeduo clone gestation time remaining, 99 years and 355 days. With 10,000 times acceleration, it would take only 3 days of external time to complete gestation. The Black Light clone clapped his hands in satisfaction. Chapter 375, The Dragon Tamed by Banner. Lejeduo's clone accelerated its gestation inside his inner world. Outside, Leon, Diana, and Kara descended onto Paradise Island. The Amazon warriors were still in a dazed state from crossing worlds. Their physiques had been drained even more than Tony's. They lay scattered and unconscious on the grass, most dressed only in tube tops and skirts. When Leon glanced down, he saw a scene of springtime abandon. Diana's eyes lingered, but Leon, with a half-righteous smile, suggested, "Let's get everyone inside. They should wake up in 10 minutes or so." Diana shook her head. "If it's only for a little while, there's no need. We used to nap on the grass all the time." Paradise Island, an all-female warrior nation, had always had places where warriors could rest in the open. With their simple customs, they often went light on clothing. More than 10 minutes later, the Amazons began to stir. Diana helped Hippolyta into the temple, and the queen's first question, upon seeing her daughter, was whether there was a new Paradise Island in the restarted world. Only after Diana assured her did Hippolyta visibly relax. But when Diana began to recount Darkseid's invasion in detail, the queen's face shifted. Hearing that the entire world had been destroyed by Darkseid drained color from her features. When she learned that Leon had killed Darkseid and restarted the world, her expression brightened. The more Diana spoke, the more animated Hippolyta became. Finally, when she heard that Paradise Island had followed Leon into another universe, she exhaled, torn between regret and relief. "Since you've come to another world, then follow Leon and see the outside properly," Hippolyta said after a pause. "If he could defeat Darkseid and restart Earth's world, then even if he's not the most faithful man, he won't be cruel." "Mother, I know, but there's something else I want to talk about," Diana began quietly, about settling Paradise Island into the small world. "No." Hippolyta, still lingering in melancholy, snapped sharply. She insisted Paradise Island must have no contact with the outside world. Diana naturally pushed back. Mother and daughter were stubborn. Their raised voices drew the attention of newly awakened warriors. The Amazons greeted Leon warmly, then fell silent to listen to the argument in the temple. In the end, Hippolyta relented. Diana reminded her of how another Wonder Woman had been poisoned and, in isolation on Paradise Island, had been cremated by the tribe, so the queen softened. "Staying in this small world you mentioned is acceptable," Hippolyta said, but she added a condition. "Paradise Island will only allow its own warriors to enter and leave. Outsiders are forbidden." "That's easy," Diana replied. "No one will force their way in. We'll carve runes around the island to restrict entry and exit." Hippolyta, seeing Diana had already planned it out, waved her hand impatiently. "If you've thought of everything, fine. Do it yourself. You never listen to anything I tell you." "How could I not listen, Mother? I remember every word." Diana smiled and slipped an arm through Hippolyta's. "Come see this small world with me. It really is beautiful. I wasn't lying." Outside the temple, Diana winked at Leon, his cue. Leon called down the fire dragons that had been circling overhead. They fell to the ground, terrified, but rather than lash out, they quickly prostrated themselves, trembling and tucking their heads beneath their wings. From the gaps, they peered around with huge eyes, clearly trained to show submission. Whoever had trained them, Banner, or rather Hulk, had done a thorough job. How Hulk had managed it was anyone's guess. Leon imagined him wrestling the dragons into obedience, one by one. Leon found the largest fire dragon, eased its wings open, and wrapped its forehead with a gentle hand. The dragon felt the force and judged the human no weaker than the big green wizard who had been training them. It reflexively rubbed its head against Leon's palm. With the alpha dragon showing submission, the others followed, opening their massive mouths, not in roar, but in awkward attempts at friendliness. "These are magical creatures from the small world, and they're surprisingly friendly," Leon told the Amazons, patting the dragon's back. Saddles were lashed to the dragon's spines. Clearly, they had been trained as mounts. Dragons? Even Hippolyta and the other Amazons were astonished. Diana had brushed past these giants earlier and admired them as myths made flesh. She hadn't expected them to be tame enough to mount. For generations, the Amazons had only ridden horses. Leon's power was so outlandish he could even command dragons. Diana and Kara were the first to climb aboard. The other warriors, full of curiosity, quickly found dragons of their own. Leon patted his dragon's head. "Come on, let me show you this small world." At his command, the dragons launched, wings beating the night air. Under the moon, their silhouettes swept across the forest. Now and then, a bowtruckle blinked from the leaves and stared up, wondering what madness these beaten but tame dragons were doing in the middle of the night. The Amazons discovered the small world wasn't small at all. From high above, they couldn't see an edge. To the north lay glacial plains, to the south, scalding lava wastelands, to the west, plateau mountains, to the east, deep basin forests. The world had a complete ecological cycle. Leon guided them on a tour of the regions, finally heading to the floating island at the center. That floating island will be the future Mage Academy, Leon said, pointing. Right now, there aren't many people. Only the mages who built the world stay here. Later, when more people come, it'll be for students and teachers. The mages of Kamar-Taj consider protecting Earth their duty, so you don't need to worry. They won't bother Paradise Island. Leon directed the dragons down. Old Wang, still working late at the academy, sensed the arrival and came out wearing a training suit. "Leon," he said, blinking, "why are you out walking Rooney and company so late?" "Banner, no, Hulk, already walked them today." Hulk training the dragons like pets. Old Wang sounded half amused. "Rooney? They're the big dragons those two ladies are riding," Leon said, nodding toward Diana and Kara. Old Wang looked over at the dragons, then back at Leon, puzzled. "So these ladies are," he began, turning to Leon for an explanation. Chapter 376, Wanda tilted her head. "They're Amazon warriors from Paradise Island," Leon told White. "From now on, Paradise Island will be part of the small world. It'll be located in the lake below. White, let everyone know not to disturb the island's life," he added. Old White nodded, a little puzzled but obedient. This small world was Leon's creation, and Leon was the Sorcerer Supreme. What he said went. "I'll inform everyone tomorrow. Anything else?" Old White kept glancing at the academy, clearly eager to leave. "No, why aren't you resting so late? You're the only one on the island," Leon asked. "I'm finalizing the academy curriculum. It's almost done. I'll have the proposal to you within 2 weeks." Old White waved and hurried away. "If that's all, I'm off. I have a shift at the Kamar-Taj library in 30 minutes. Watching Old White go, Leon shook his head. Old White's the same as always, busy as ever, but he still hasn't lost any weight. "Come on, I'll show you the academy again." Leon left the giant river dragons to patrol the waterways and led everyone through the campus. After the tour, the dragons returned them to Paradise Island. Seeing the small world's scenery again even moved Queen Hippolyta. Staying here suddenly didn't seem so bad. The other Amazon warriors were even more enthusiastic. As soon as they landed, the Amazons swarmed around Diana, offering to carve the runes that would restrict entry and exit for outsiders. They worried that if they hesitated, Her Majesty might change her mind and take them all away. The carving itself was straightforward. With everyone working together, it took only an hour to inscribe nodes around the island. The final step was Diana activating the sigils with her divine power. The whole island flashed with golden light. From then on, unless forced, only those present at that moment could freely enter or leave Paradise Island. Everyone watched Hippolyta's face. When she showed no sign of changing her mind, the Amazons burst into cheers. Night fell. Even though only a single night had passed in the DCEU timeline, Leon, Diana, and Kara stayed on Paradise Island. "Kara and I each have our own rooms? That's wasteful. We can share Diana's chamber and not trouble anyone else," Leon said, grinning. He pretended to turn into the big bad wolf and playfully trick the two innocent white rabbits. Diana, naive to human mischief, readily obliged. Kara obliged as well. The result was predictable. The two didn't get much sleep. Only a sigh escaped the experienced Queen Hippolyta, who pounded her chest and stomped her foot in mock dismay. Her daughter, like herself in youth, was falling deeper into this kind of folly. The next morning, the three of them sat on the edge of the floating island, looking out over the lake. They were curled up like kittens. Even Diana's divine physique and Kara's Kryptonian resilience showed traces of last night's exhaustion in their flushed faces. "So you both want to come to New York with me? It might not be what you expect," Leon said, pressing his cheek to Kara's hair and looking at Diana. "It can't be worse than Gotham, can it? I heard the other Wonder Woman say Gotham is full of sin," Diana replied, leaning on Leon's shoulder. "You promised me I could see human life in a big city." "If I can, I want to go to school too, like the other Wonder Woman, become a museum researcher," Diana added. "I can contact Columbia for you," Leon said. "I just graduated from there a few months ago. The dean likes me." "Does he like your talent or your money?" Diana teased, aware of Stark Industries' weight. Probably both. Leon glanced at Kara. And you, Kara? I want to be stronger. Sunbathing can be done anywhere. I want to go to New York. Kara stared at the lake. The morning light made her skin look almost translucent. When Leon first awakened his Kryptonian bloodline, he'd felt the same shadow of lacking strength, a hunger to become more powerful. You could use my old spaceship to sunbathe, Leon suggested. It's a good place for that. Come back whenever you want. Kara considered it. I'll go during the day and come back at night. That works. The three of us together at night, Leon replied. No way, only that one time yesterday. Diana gave him an accusing but playful look. They laughed and teased each other as the sun climbed. Then a voice came from behind them. Oh, Leon, why are you with Natasha and Yelena here? The speaker trailed off and then fell silent, the words dying as realization dawned. Leon turned. It was Wanda. Morning at Camartage and late night in New York had overlapped for some odd reason. Wanda held a cowhide-bound magic book in her hand. She looked like she'd finished her classes and her nightly superhero duties and was returning the volume to the academy before bed. Old White had copied the non-forbidden tomes and stocked them in the academy as a lending service, letting mages take books home. Wanda, why are you returning the book so early? Leon asked, his voice a little awkward. The joy on Wanda's face quickly drained, her eyes fixed on him and darkened into an unnerving red. Leon couldn't help but be reminded of yandere characters from stories he'd once known, sweet smiles that hid a blade. He felt a chill run down his spine. Wanda, are you all right? He asked, releasing his arms from around the two girls beside him. Something felt very wrong. Wanda had known Leon's roving ways for days. This reaction was much stronger than expected. Diana and Kara turned toward Wanda. Diana tilted her head and whispered in Leon's ear, Is this the Wanda you mentioned? She reached a hand toward Leon's waist at the same time. Wanda's head tilted in return, and she spoke, quiet but sharp. Who are they? Her gaze fell on Diana's fingers slipping toward Leon's waist. The hand holding the book flickered with crimson light. Leon's supervision picked up the subtle shimmer of power, and his internal alarm bells sounded loudly. Wanda's chaos magic could reshape the world to match her thoughts. It was an intensely idealistic power, and like all idealistic abilities, it fluctuated with her emotions, surging or ebbing as her state of mind changed. Wanda had learned to use chaos magic skillfully by drawing on the experiences of other Scarlet Witches she met in dreams of parallel universes. Her spells were as powerful and polished as the Wanda from the movies. Still, her power wasn't stable. The other Scarlet Witches had earned their strength through one tragedy after another. Wanda had only ever learned by immersing herself in those lives in her dreams. Her technique improved, but her control was not yet complete. When her emotions roiled, chaos magic sometimes acted on its own, answering subconscious desires. Not long ago, Wanda and Carl had planned to go to the cinema, but it began to snow so heavily that the streets were buried and the theaters shut down. Wanda hugged herself, disappointed. Before she could do anything else, the city seemed to be wiped clean by a giant brush and turned into the height of summer. Coats changed into sundresses and shorts. People who had been bundled in down jackets were suddenly in short sleeves. Wanda panicked and flailed to undo it. She frantically assured Carl she hadn't meant it. Carl suggested she learn the basics from zero. Chaos magic was the root of so much sorcery. If she strengthened her magical foundation, her control would naturally improve. That's why she'd been at Camartage, borrowing books. For more than half a month, she'd been devouring a magic book every 3 days. Today she walked up on Carl, flirting with two women she didn't recognize. At first, she thought it might be Natasha and Yelena, but when she looked closely, the surprise curdled into sharp, hot jealousy. Carl had become an ascetic of sorts, habitually sitting on rooftops and keeping to himself. How could he be flirting with other women? They must have seduced him. Shameless hussies should just disappear. Red mist clouded her vision. Chaos magic started to stir, answering the wish that those two unfamiliar women vanish from Carl's side. Then Carl's palm landed on her forehead. It made a sharp sound, pop, and left a faint red mark. Wanda whimpered, clutching a book to her chest and covering her brow. The magic stilled. "What are you thinking about? You look completely zoned out," Carl said, looking around as if nothing odd had happened. Inside, he breathed a quiet sigh of relief. He wasn't very good at dealing with jealous girls. His way of getting what he wanted had always been to be bold and straightforward, like Henry Cavill. Ask a girl out, and 9 times out of 10 it worked. He often fumbled when faced with a storm of emotion. Tony had once given him a practical piece of advice while driving to a party with one hand on the wheel. When a girl gets angry because you asked someone else out, don't argue. Interrupt her train of thought. Girls are emotional. They'll quickly forget what made them angry if you break the moment. How? Carl had asked. Tony had grinned and said, pull out $1 million check. It was ridiculous, but it had worked for Tony. Carl didn't have $1 million handy. He did, however, have a different plan. He knew Wanda's weakness. She was kind to a fault. If he could turn her anger into pity, the moment would pass. You came at the perfect time, he said, grasping Wanda's wrist and steering her, still teary, still rubbing her forehead, toward the 2 women. Let me introduce you. This is Diana Prince, and this is Kara Zor-El. They came back with me from the DC universe. Carl introduced Wanda first, then Diana and Kara. Diana and Kara already knew about Wanda and smiled at her in a friendly, prepared way. Wanda blinked, still half bewildered. The DC universe? The one I know? That's right, the DC universe, one of the IPs under our superhero company, Carl said. You can travel to other universes? Wanda's mouth fell open. She looked at the 2 women. You're Wonder Woman and Supergirl? Wait, Supergirl's Carl's cousin? Kara shook her head quickly. My cousin is Kal-El, not Carl. Wanda nodded, figuring that if Carl was Superman, then it made sense he'd have brought another Kryptonian. But a tiny, nagging doubt prickled at her. She was supposed to be angry. How had she gone from furious to making friends with people from another world so suddenly? Carl's expression grew serious. Diana's world was occupied by Darkseid. Their Earth, it was wiped out. The apocalypse came. He leaned in, emphasizing every tragic detail. Kara, her entire Kryptonian family, was destroyed. She wandered the stars. The way it happened here is different from the comics. She was only 8 or 9 when she arrived on Earth, and Luthor imprisoned her. Luthor and Darkseid? Wanda's voice rose. She'd read a lot of DC. Hearing those names made her worried. Carl nodded slowly. Kara was kept by Luthor for years. She stared at walls for days, wasting away in body and spirit. I rescued her, just in time, but then the world fell apart. Wanda, you know me. I couldn't stand by and watch them suffer, helpless and alone in an apocalypse. Wanda's face softened. Carl was not someone who would ignore people in need. He recounted Diana and Kara's misfortune in a way that tugged at her heart. He mentioned his own actions only in passing. A few minutes later, Wanda wiped her wet eyes and was already inviting Diana and Kara to her apartment. She couldn't fix everything, but as someone who knew what it felt like to be lost in a strange world, she could give them a home, some warmth, a sense of belonging. Especially Kara. Kara's story echoed parts of Wanda's past. Diana and Kara accepted her invitation. They saw Wanda's kindness and appreciated it. Still, something felt odd to both of them. Were they really as miserable as Carl had said? They had been relatively content after leaving the DCEU. Listening to Carl's tear-jerking account, they exchanged glances. If they didn't appear sad and moved right now, they would feel a little callous, so they let their expressions mirror the grief Carl had painted for them, not wanting to seem heartless. Chapter 378. The chapter has come to this point. Let's practice first. All right, we can talk about this later. Duo stroked Wanda's long hair. Wanda, you have school tomorrow, don't you? Return the books, then go home and get some sleep. Holding the magic book, Wanda only then realized how late it was. Right. I need to hurry and return the books. Diana, Kara, when you come to New York, you must come find me. She even waved to them. Diana waved back. Okay, Kara and I will be moving to New York very soon. It won't be long. You're moving to New York too? Wanda stopped. Where will you be staying? Maybe we'll be close. Diana answered bluntly. We don't know the exact location yet. Kara and I haven't been to New York, but we'll be staying at Duo's house. Wanda, you should know where that is. Wanda froze. Duo's house. So Diana and Kara were going to live with Duo. They would be living together. Maybe many things that should or shouldn't have happened already had. Wanda stared at Diana, and a memory of the three of them nestled together earlier came rushing back. She felt sick to her stomach. She touched her chest. The sharp ache she'd felt before had mostly faded, but the discomfort lingered. It wasn't as overwhelming now, but whenever she pictured that scene, she still felt uneasy. Maybe she'd been angry because she didn't understand Diana and Kara. Now that she did, she felt pity for them, tragic, even more so than she was, and couldn't bring herself to hate them. But why was this happening? Wanda had already come to accept that Legieduo liked many girls. Natasha and Yelena, with their remarkable figures, already lived in his apartment. He had Ada and Jill in other worlds. When she'd first learned this, she'd felt smothered, but she consoled herself with the thought that she would be the one to stay with Legieduo until the end. She'd assumed Legieduo had no real social life, that he spent his days on the balcony basking in the sun and wouldn't let other girls into his life. She believed that if she kept an eye on her friend Gwen, she could hold on to him. But who could have imagined that today, in the small world, she would witness something she'd never even imagined? Two strangers she'd never seen before beside Legieduo, exquisite faces, perfect bodies that could outshine supermodels, intimately close to him. In that moment, something unnamed ignited in Wanda, and negative emotions burned through her. Then Legieduo interrupted. Putting the pieces together in her head, Wanda's mind, never subtle at analysis, landed on a simple conclusion. "You're misdirecting me. No, you're protecting them," she snapped, looking at him with sudden certainty. A surge of grievance welled up. She'd known she'd been off earlier, but he'd steered her. Worse, did that mean she was somehow inferior? Natasha and Yelena had lived in that flat a while. There was nothing she could do about them. But compared to Diana and Kara, Wanda had arrived earlier, hadn't she? She was the first. She could do the same things. So why was she the only one Legieduo wouldn't accept? Why wouldn't he even want to touch her, while he went to other worlds to find other girls? Was it because she and Pietro had targeted Tony Stark before? That had been ages ago. What could she possibly do now? Grievance, sadness, and anger tangled together. Her lips trembled as she pressed them together. Legieduo's face blurred in her vision. "You're the biggest jerk in the world, Legieduo," she cried. Wanda slammed the magic book she was holding against Legieduo's chest, then turned and ran, ripping open a rift and vanishing back to her apartment. As she spun away, wet drops of water, the remnants of tears, flew onto Legieduo's cheek. "Ah, Wanda, wait," he blurted. "This was bad. Weren't they just saying goodbye peacefully a moment ago? How had it turned so suddenly stormy? Girls could be like weather systems," he thought, unpredictable and mercurial. He remained standing, stunned. Diana pushed his shoulder. She tilted her chin toward the direction Wanda had fled. "Aren't you going to chase after her? Don't be heartless like Zeus." Kara looked at him with confusion. "What's wrong with her? You should go see." There were the blunt types, like Diana, and the more gentle ones, like Kara. Legieduo realized in that instant that his actions had been discovered. No wonder Wanda had exploded. "You two wait on Paradise Island for now. I'll come back and we'll go to New York together." He handed Diana and Kara two smart comms devices made by Stark Industries, then extended a finger and drew a ring in the air. The mystic art of portals flared to life, aiming for Wanda's room. But before the space could fully connect, a thick wave of chaos magic surged and repaired the tear. "It can do that?" Legieduo muttered, stunned. It was the first time the mystic art of portals had failed on him, like a call that gets instantly rejected. He tried again and again, only to find each portal he opened patched over by Wanda's magic. He switched tactics and opened a portal to his own apartment. When that failed, he flew out from his balcony toward Wanda's building. The moment he neared, a spatial rift ripped open and swallowed him, spitting him back into his apartment in an instant. "She won't even let me get close," he said quietly. Wanda was really angry this time. He could sense her emotions. They didn't quite feel like simple anger. She seemed more sad than furious, and she was precise enough to intercept his attempts and send him back. She was clearly paying attention to him. Legieduo frowned, thinking. In a situation like this, the right move would be a sincere apology, but Wanda wouldn't let him get close. He couldn't just fly over and break through her magic with brute force, drag her into his arms and say, "Heh, woman, you've got my attention." That would be absurd. Compared to Fury, Wanda seemed more sorrowful. He should let her be alone for a while. Legier Duo reopened the mystic art of portals and returned to Camartage. He planned to stay there for 3 days. 3 days from now, Wanda would come back to return her books, a perfect chance to mend things. It was also when the Regi Duo clone would be successfully nurtured. Since it's come to this, he thought, I should cultivate for a bit. Chapter 3. Regido. 3 days passed in a blur. Wanda didn't have a good time. On the first day, she kept blocking Leon at the door, thinking she never wanted to see him again. On the second day, she took leave from class and stayed in bed, gloomy. When Pietro asked what was wrong, she threw a pillow at him. She brutally wondered why Leon hadn't come. On the third day, she still didn't go out. She sat by the bed, absent-minded and anxious. Leon hadn't shown up for 2 days. Had she been too harsh? She should at least have listened to what he wanted to say. Her thoughts spun with doubt. What had Leon been doing these past 3 days? Hasn't Leon been sitting there for 3 days? Maybe he lost trying to win Wanda back and got beaten up, Diana murmured from the floating island. Impossible, Kara replied. Leon's inner will is iron strong. He's not even afraid of death. How could he be broken by losing someone? Kara had seen Leon die more times than she could count. If it were her with the power of resurrection, the fear of death would still linger. Leon's recklessness impressed and baffled her in equal measure. They were still debating whether to go cheer him up when Leon, who had been sitting at the edge of the island, suddenly opened his eyes and grinned. It's finally matured. His face lit up with joy, the exact opposite of the defeated figure Diana and Kara had imagined. They were about to ask what had happened when a magnificent sacred light suddenly surged from Leon's body. It was blinding, like a sun rising just meters away. Both women squinted and raised their hands to shield their faces. When the light faded, Leon was gone. Where did Leon go? Minutes earlier, inside the world, above the Blood Sea, and on a distant peak where the black light clone stood with his hands behind his back, both figures looked up at a 60-meter-tall golden egg hanging in the sky. The oval egg had started about as tall as the black light clone, but after 100 years of nurturing under 10,000 times time acceleration, it had grown to 60 meters. Now the final stage had come. All the world's energy surged toward the giant egg. A torrent pouring from the space stone had braided into a massive ribbon that split the world in two. The world answered, and Leon's consciousness sharpened to full focus. Success, he breathed. Tiny cracks spidered across the golden shell, cracking sounds echoing like continents splitting. The fractures spread until the shell disintegrated into a scattering of light. Then a figure appeared in the sky, 10,000 meters of radiant presence that lit mountains, oceans, and land, standing with a clenched fist. Leon's three-part vision split again as his consciousness slid into the newly born Reg Duo clone's body. It felt like a stone giant waking after eons, finally meeting its round ancient and transforming into light. Leon's last clone, Reg Duo, had been successfully nurtured. Still a little unfamiliar in the new body, Leon felt like a newborn, wanting to cry as he learned to command limb and thought. Everything I see is light, he said, astonished. There was no need to test the clone's innate talents. The Reg Duo clone exuded a light affinity, like a source of light or will of light. Simply opening his eyes let light-based laws and knowledge flow straight into his mind. The clone's innate quantum grasp of information seemed automatic. As expected of Reg Duo, Leon murmured. He examined the silver-blue, streamlined body with reverent amusement. Every inch suggested nobility and secret might. So handsome, he said, striking a pose and admiring his waist as if it were a snake coiling up a trunk. Had the real Reg Duo seen him, he'd probably erase Leon on the spot for the embarrassment. But before Leon could properly test the clone's talents, the Reg Duo's body erupted with an enormous gravitational pull. The world's energy rushed in like a whale swallowing the sea. The clone began to grow, 50 meters, 100, 1,000, at an alarming visible rate, 1,000 kilometers, 10,000 kilometers, ultimately swelling to 90,000 kilometers tall. Its bulk outgrew Earth several times over. Energy contained within it now rivaled that of a star. 90,000 kilometers, that's right, perfect genes grow to 90,000 kilometers, Leon said, elated. The Reg Duo clone has perfect genes. In the Starry Sky system, maximum output depends on strength realm, law comprehension, and secret technique intensity, but a larger body stores more energy, resists damage better, and endures longer. The Reg Duo clone stood like a pillar that rooted through the world. Even the Blood Sea clone seemed tiny beside it. Leon felt utterly magnificent, intoxicated by power. This clone, gene level 1081, was at least 10 times stronger than his main body on every axis. Its 90,000-kilometer form contained inconceivably more energy than Leon himself. First, talents, Leon said, eager to probe the clone's capacities. Before he could, an unexpected supreme wave descended across the Marvel Universe and penetrated the world. It synchronized with the Rage Duo clone, which then exploded into endless light, bathing not only the world, but also Leon's main body in the outside world. Leon's instincts spiked. He noticed a spatial portal opening within the light, beyond which lay a deep, mysterious, vast aura, like a boundless universe waiting for a stranger. He sensed no immediate danger, and with a flicker of hesitation, stepped through. Instantly the world, his main body, and his other two clones vanished from Earth, and the swap completed. Leon found himself as the Reed Duo clone in the outside world, while his main body and the other clones had been pulled inside the world. As he crossed the invisible threshold, his vision dimmed, and the cascading light from his 90,000-kilometer form began to fold inward and converge. Chapter 380. Chapter Eternity. Conceptual Entity. You're here. Before Leon could take in his surroundings, an ethereal voice spoke in his ear. It had no clear gender, no audible throat, yet it spoke Chinese. Leon froze. The fact it knew his native language meant it knew where he came from. In the Marvel Multiverse, beings crossed between worlds all the time. That alone usually wasn't remarkable. Still, it was disconcerting to be understood so immediately. He looked down and the reason became clear. This was a world without blemish, a pure white sky, flawless clouds floating without shadow. The ground was clear, transparent water that mirrored the sky. Sky and water blurred into one endless white, like some legendary heaven or the clearest dream. At the very center of that water sat two figures. One was cross-legged and enormous, 4 or 5 meters tall, neither purely human nor alien. Its body was somewhere between the ethereal and the tangible. It had no flesh or blood. Every inch of it was a starry vault. Looking at the figure felt like gazing into a miniature universe. This form was not flesh, but a cosmic temple. Eternity, Leon breathed, looking down. He was staring directly at the embodiment of the universe he now inhabited. Of course, this was not the absolute, multiversal eternity, but the eternity that corresponded to this individual Marvel universe, an embody, a kind of clone-like aspect of the true abstract entity. Each Marvel universe had its own such presence. It is I, a face formed from the galaxies on the figure's head, the mouth lifting at the corners. So, was that portal open for me by you? Leon asked. From where he stood, his 90,000-kilometer body seated cross-legged, his eyes glittered like lamps. It was I, and it was you. Eternity's voice took on the cadence of a riddle. But before I explain fully, you may wish to speak with your friend. Leon followed the gesture. Beside Eternity stood a bald man in a yellow robe, hands clasped behind his back, an old acquaintance. Sorcerer Ancient One, long time no see. The figure with the yellow robe was indeed the Ancient One, or rather her soul. She smiled and shook her head. Half a year hardly counts as a long time, Leon. You've done more than I imagined. I have watched what you've done for Earth and for Kamartaj. Even seeing Leon as a 90,000-kilometer Ultraman didn't faze her. She was looking at his soul. Leon grinned. I thought you'd been off enjoying yourself after stepping down. I did not shirk duty. It was simply my time, and I found a suitable successor, the Ancient One said, smiling. So you're pleased, Leon teased. When I go back, I'll change Kamartaj's Wi-Fi password to Geisel. The Ancient One choked, briefly speechless. If you deem it necessary, then so be it. You really don't care about anything now that you've passed on? Leon continued. By the way, Kamartaj is opening an academy, and Wong wants portraits of past Sorcerer Supremes. Could I have a wisp of your soul for the portrait? Of course. The Ancient One separated a thin wisp of soul and sent it through the air to him. Leon accepted it in silence, mentally picturing the portrait smiling and announcing, The password is shell. The image nearly made him lose his composure. I look forward to the Academy's opening, he said, then turned his attention back to Eternity. So, great God Eternity, why am I here? Because of your current body, Eternity answered. My body? Laedo Ultraman? Leon echoed. Eternity didn't answer directly. I have been waiting for you a long time, Leon. Waiting for me? Heh, Eternity said. Didn't you tell me not long ago that you wanted to speak with the one above all? You wanted me to call you a friend. Leon flushed. If he still had a face to flush. He'd tossed out that boast half a year ago while sweeping the graves of Howard's parents with Tony Stark, a grand gesture that apparently carried farther than he'd expected. I did say that, but how did you know? Did I call your name, or were you watching me? Both. Eternity sounded amused. You may not have noticed, but when you first returned after leaving the universe, you used your special ability to contact me. Since then, along with infinity and death, have observed you from time to time, Eternity said plainly. Leon had no retort. It seemed his friend requests to cosmic entities had long been sent, just pending acceptance. So you let me come because you accepted my friend request? Leon joked. No. Eternity pointed at him. Because your avatar, this body, qualifies to become a concept entity. A familiar ripple of energy, the same mysterious fluctuation that had descended from the universe onto his Reg Duo clone, spread outward again. That fluctuation was a mark of qualification, the Reg Duo clone's potential to become a concept god. Now, Eternity itself had conferred that qualification. Eternity recited a long litany, his voice filled with cosmic weight. I am the universe, the primordial fire, the flowing water, the howling wind, everything upon the earth. My offspring, entropy, is the embodiment of decay and desolation. I have 7 children in all, each born from me and each representing some aspect of the cosmos. They each carry the power to create or destroy worlds. And you, my friend Leon. Eternity's voice turned soft and direct. From now on, this body of yours will also become the embodiment of a concept, justice and order. Leon stared. You've given it to me? You are not my child, Eternity said. My offspring were my birthright. You did not come from me, yet you can become a concept in your own right. I have granted your form the qualification, but there is a difference. Becoming a concept is not merely a gift. You must witness, uphold, and embody that concept to truly be justice and order.